This Council resumes the second reading debate on the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. Mr. Lee Chun-keung, Chair of the Bills Committee on the bill, will first address the Council on the committee's report. Mr. Michael Lee. Thank you, President. In my capacity as Chairman of the Bills Committee on Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025, I report to this Council the key deliberations of the Bills Committee. The bill seeks to amend the Air Passenger Departure Tax Ordinance to increase the Air Passenger Departure Tax, or APDT, from 120 Hong Kong dollars to 200 Hong Kong dollars per passenger, while streamlining the administrative fee payment mechanism. The new mechanism empowers the Financial Secretary to authorize operators, that means airline companies and helicopter companies, to retain a portion of the APDT collected for offsetting the administrative fees payable to them, and to provide that the retained fees do not form part of the government's general revenue. The Bills Committee has held 2 meetings with the administration and invited public submissions. Members have expressed grave concerns about the APDT increase. They've made numerous suggestions to mitigate its negative impacts, including strengthening Hong Kong's advantages and competitiveness as a transit and international aviation hub. These suggestions have been adopted by the administration. Members have considered that the APDT increase lacks reasonable justification, which will have significant impact on the low-cost carriers. It would deter the low-cost carriers, or LCCs, from establishing routes in Hong Kong and prompt passengers to opt for high-speed rail or airports with lower tax rates, thereby weakening Hong Kong's competitiveness as an aviation hub. Members have emphasized that raising the APDT during the critical recovery period of the aviation and tourism industries will adversely affect Hong Kong's position as an aviation hub. The administration has advised that it has struck a balance between increasing revenue and minimizing impact on passengers. The current adjustment is made on the basis of the fact that the tax rate has not been revised for a prolonged period, as well as inflationary justifications, assessment of passenger affordability. The aim is to increase public revenue while maintaining Hong Kong's attractiveness as an aviation hub. Members have requested the administration to consider other options, including adjusting the tax rate in phases, imposing differential taxes based on flight distance or cabin class, adding a sunset clause to the bill, or conducting a review after the government's fiscal situation or the overall economic condition have improved. A member has proposed an amendment to lower the rate of the hike by half from $80 to $40. Having deliberated and voted on the proposal, the Bills Committee has decided not to move in its name the proposed amendment to reduce the rate of increase in APDT. The administration has explained that the current rate of APDT increase is reasonable, and it has no intention to adjust the rate, nor would it defer the increase or do it in phases. The existing practice of collecting a flat rate is simple and straightforward. The administration will study and implement a number of exemptions proposed by members, such as tax concessions for transfer and transit passengers. Additional revenue is needed to offset the loss of APDT revenue arising from the exemptions. As for reviewing the APDT rate or adding sunset clause to the bill in the future, the administration will formulate appropriate measures in preparing the annual budget, having regard to the economic situation and the fiscal position. On promoting a tourist economy, members have suggested extending the exemption from passengers arriving and departing on the same day to those departing from Hong Kong by aircraft on the next calendar day. The exemption can encourage more transfer passengers to stay in Hong Kong shortly before reaching the final destination, thereby generating tourism income for Hong Kong as a win-win. The administration has accepted members' suggestions. It proposes to extend the exemption to passengers departing from Hong Kong by aircraft on the next calendar day, that is, maximum of 48 hours. The subsidiary legislation will be submitted to the Legislative Council in the coming 2 or 3 months. To enhance Hong Kong's competitiveness as a transit hub, members have suggested extending the exemption of APDT to cover all transit passengers arriving in Hong Kong via land and sea boundary control points. This measure will provide convenience to all transit passengers and reinforce our status as an international aviation hub. Through tourism promotion, the administration has undertaken to conduct a study and finalize the specific proposals within the year. Members have suggested that the administration consider collaborating with the Transport and Logistics Bureau, the Airport Authority of Hong Kong, and industry to explore measures to attract passengers from the Greater Bay Area to transfer via Hong Kong and at the same time promote inbound tourism spending during the stay of transport passengers in Hong Kong, benefiting the retail and tourism industries. The administration has advised that it will continue to enhance the competitiveness of the Hong Kong International Airport. Key measures include expanding the aviation network, developing major routes and integrated intermodal transport networks, enhancing support facilities to attract global business and travelers. While members support streamlining the administration fee payment mechanisms, they are concerned that the Civil Aviation Department will no longer need to credit the administration fees to the relevant revenue account, which may undermine transparency and oversight. According to the administration, the proposed amendment seeks to streamline workflow. It has undertaken to maintain the mechanism of disclosing information on administration fees. The amounts of deduction will be published regularly to ensure transparency and public accountability. Neither the administration nor the Bills Committee will move any amendment to the bill. President, I'd like to offer my take on the bill. This bill seeks to increase the air passenger departure tax from $120 to 200 Hong Kong dollars per passenger. I'm chairman of the Bills Committee, and I listened carefully to members' views, including competition between aircrafts and the high-speed rail, competition between the Hong Kong International Airport and neighboring airports, and after the APDT hike, whether fewer passengers will depart from Hong Kong. Now, according to the administration, the last hike was introduced 22 years ago, and we need to catch up with inflation. The airport construction fee was levied starting from 6 or 7 years ago, and still the number of passengers using the airport continues to increase. That means with this hike of $80, at least a passenger will have to pay $355 for the levies and the tax, and for long-haul passengers they need to pay as much as $425. So I think that the administration should review the arrangement in the future. I do hope that when circumstances permit, that the tax can be scrapped so as to enhance the competitiveness of our airport and to narrow the margin with other airports. Now, it is said that an annual revenue or additional revenue of $1.6 billion will be generated through this hike. But as I said just now, the government should be more prudent about any tax hike, just like the tobacco duty, etc., because this will disincentivize tourists from coming to Hong Kong. Now, we are also concerned about the cash flow situation of travel agents. After the APDT hike, they need to pay extra first before reimbursing the amount, and during peak seasons that may have a cash flow squeeze on the travel agents. The government should provide suitable support. The other concern is the impact on low-cost carriers. Now, each flight ticket may only cost $800, $900. That means a $200 APDT will be quite significant in proportion. In the end of the day, a passenger may opt for other options other than the low-cost carriers. So this will deal a blow to them. The administration should collect data and look carefully into the situation. About the exemption for transfer passengers staying for not more than 48 hours, I think the administration should promote this exemption arrangements to more transit passengers. At the same time, vouchers, coupons should be distributed to encourage consumption in shopping malls and other entertainment venues. There could also be collaboration with hotels, resorts, theme parks, so as to benefit more tourists and let them feel the charm of Hong Kong within 48 hours. I also propose some free experiential tours for the transit passengers. If not free, they can be some low-cost tours such as the Victoria Harbour tour, or they could be arranged to visit some areas or streets with special characteristics. We can also organize tours such as island hopping tours, a visit to the geopark in Sai Kung, etc., for them to have a taste of the uniqueness of Hong Kong. Well, take Changi Airport in Singapore as an example. They offer facilitation for transit passengers. Apart from transit hotels, lounges, they also have free local tours in Singapore. These tours are operated in jointly by the Tourism Bureau of Singapore, the Singapore Airline, as well as Changi Airport. They offer free guided tours of the city. Now, many European visitors have multiple destinations in Southeast Asia. So if they transit in Hong Kong, I hope that there is a chance for them to tour around Hong Kong and learn about our charms so that they may choose to come back to Hong Kong again as so submit.
Reverend Peter Kun, Deputy President, we're faced with a serious fiscal deficit. So we are trying to save unnecessary costs. The government has also introduced measures to increase government revenue. That includes increasing the departure tax from 120 Hong Kong dollars to 200 Hong Kong dollars. The tourism industry is the most affected and has raised their concerns. I understand the government is faced with a dilemma. We are trying to have new sources of revenue, but we also need to prevent burdening the citizens. The departure tax has not been adjusted for 20 years. The degree of change on this occasion is significant, but the amount is not that high. We have the airport express tickets costing more than $80 now. For those coming to Hong Kong or for those departing from Hong Kong, the increase in the departure tax will not be significant. Some say with this, it will dampen the competitiveness of Hong Kong to overnight visitors. And I'm glad the government has introduced enhancement measures to waive the relevant charges for transit passengers or those who will stay here for the night. I think the government can pledge in future when the fiscal position gets better, there will be adjustments. And should there be an economic recovery, I think we have room to lower the relevant departure tax. The concerns raised are in relation to the amount of departure tax. I would say this is an opportunity for us to consider our positioning as an international aviation hub. We have seen neighboring cities developing their airports, Singapore, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. They have been expanding their airports. They have more runways. They have new flight routes. They have even expanded their terminals. We have seen their recovery of passenger throughput being much better than Hong Kong. So we are lagging behind. But with the commissioning of the 3-runway system and the second terminal of Hong Kong, we should leverage on our advantages and our flight network to attract more visitors, especially those from the Greater Bay Area mainland cities, to transit here or even stay overnight here. We should be a connector for airlines to have negotiations so that we can have more flight routes from and to Hong Kong, especially with the GB mainland cities. I so submit. Deputy President, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Deputy President, the Financial Secretary in February of this year announced the budget for 2025-26. It is suggested that the departure tax will be increased from $120 to $200. It will bring about an additional tax revenue of $1.6 billion. I believe if you ask citizens would not want the departure tax increase, but we have external challenges. As we all know, we also are faced with the tariff wars. We face a slower recovery than expected. The retail sector has been challenged. We need to save fiscal costs and develop new sources of revenue. If we are to change taxes in the other taxes, it will be very difficult. We have first promulgated the departure tax many years ago, and the last time it was adjusted, it was in 2003 from $80 to $120. It has been over 20 years now. We have seen a 64% inflation in the period, which is a similar level of increase for the departure tax on this occasion. I believe there is insignificant impact on the stakeholders. According to the Tourism Board's figures, we have short-haul passengers that would not include those from the mainland or long-haul passengers. Their per capita spending would be $6,200 to $7,000 odd. So the $80 increase will only account for 1.3% or 1.1% of their expenditure. It is insignificant. Increasing the departure tax is not unique to Hong Kong. We have in Japan the Prime Minister suggesting that they are considering the increase of departure tax from 54 Hong Kong dollars to 270 Hong Kong dollars. That is to protect the resources of Japan and ensure the prudent development of Japan. So our increase is relatively mild. We have provided exemptions for transit passengers who have arrived in Hong Kong and departing Hong Kong in the same day. I understand that after the announcement of the departure tax arrangements, the government has maintained liaison with stakeholders. There are some adjustments, including some exemption arrangements being expanded. Before, we only have exemptions for same-day visitors. We have now expanded the exemptions to cover overnight transit passengers, that is, those who will be here for 48 hours. Compared to neighboring cities, Singapore, Seoul, and Tokyo, they only have exemptions for 24-hour passengers. I believe that would help Hong Kong maintain its competitiveness as a transit hub, and visitors are more inclined to stay in Hong Kong as a result. These amendments will come into effect on 1st of October this year. So for those purchasing flight tickets after 1st of October, they will be subject to the $200 departure tax. We have seen uncertainties in the global economy. We have many who are in a difficult position, including the government. I hope the public will understand what the government is going through. When the fiscal position improves, I believe the government will, as soon as possible, review the departure tax arrangements to see if we can have the departure tax lowered. I so submit speaking in support of the bill.
Ms. Doreen Kong, Deputy President. Now, the administration has proposed to increase the APDT by $80. That has sparked a heated discussion in the community. At first, I was worried about its negative impact on the recovery of the tourism industry, but I heard the administration's explanation and the data they've provided. I understand that an amendment will be proposed to allow transit passengers to be exempted even if they depart on the next calendar day. And on this basis, I am changing my preliminary view, and I will support this bill. I think what is important is to consider the demand, especially the price elasticity of demand, and also the actual impact on the economy brought about by the APDT. Now, according to the study, the air passenger departure tax accounts for only a small portion of the air ticket price. That means the elasticity is low. For a long haul or business traveler, this is an insignificant impact. By comparison, we will have 1.6 billion additional revenue in the public coffers. In January 2019, in an international journal of tourism research, there was an article titled "Short-Run Impact of the Flight Departure Tax on Air Travel." According to this article, a departure tax has minimal impact on a regular hub, that is an aviation hub. Now, we last saw a hike in 2003. Having regard to inflation, we'll only be able to catch up with inflation if we raise the amount to $160. So in effect, this hike to $200 will mean an actual increase of $38. Now, the rate for Hong Kong is on the low side. Comparing to, say, the Frankfurt airport, the departure tax is €70. For the London airport, if you take a long haul in a business class, the tax could be as high as 226 British pounds and sterling. That's 2,100 Hong Kong dollars. Even for Singapore airport in Asia, the tax is 360 Hong Kong dollars, and it will also progressively be increased to 79.2 Singaporean dollars by 2030 in 3 years. That's 2 times the APDT in Hong Kong. So this proposed increase in Hong Kong remains reasonable, but there are also places around the world that don't charge a departure tax, such as Ireland, but they are few in number. Now, in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong International Airport has been making efforts to enhance tourist experience. And of course, this comes with a cost, so the increase is reasonable. There are concerns whether the APDT will affect the low-cost carriers in operation. Now, comparing to Singapore, we do not have many LCCs operating routes here, so we pale in comparison to Singapore. But the air passenger departure tax is not a major obstacle to the low-cost carriers. In 2020, we had a similar discussion. The problem lies rather with a shortage of pilots and technicians. I hope that in the future, if the administration decides to adjust the APDT, the administration should have reference to the practices adopted by other airports such as the ones in Germany, UK and Malaysia, and that there should be differential departure tax imposed on different routes and cabin classes. This can help minimize the impact on the LCCs and generate more income for the government. Now, in fact, this hike will be introduced in October, and this is not the high season, so it's a satisfactory arrangement. I've been told by an economist that if you want to introduce a major policy, then you should in a sense, perform a major surgery in one go instead of doing it in drips and drabs. So according to the economists, we should introduce a hike once and for all instead of doing it in phases. Now, Hong Kong is not like Venice. We don't rely on mass tourism to generate income. We are an international business center. For business travelers, $200 of APDT is deterrence. For those who need to come to Hong Kong, they will come anyway. And on this basis, I support the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Deputy President, the Financial Secretary announced in this year's budget the enhanced or reinforced fiscal consolidation program, and there will be a rigorous control of government spending. The target is that within this term of government, a progressive approach will be taken to restore fiscal balance in the operating account. So be it tapping new income streams or controlling expenditure, careful assessments should be conducted to ensure that the overall competitiveness of Hong Kong and people's livelihood will not be affected. In the face of huge deficit, the government maintains its undertaking to provide public services. At the same time, we need to control expenditure. The Financial Secretary announced that starting from the third quarter of 2025-26, the Air Passenger Departure Tax, or APDT, will go up from $120 to $200 per passenger, and it is estimated that $1.6 billion of additional revenue can be generated per year. There are two parts to this amendment bill. The first one is to increase the APDT, as mentioned, from $120 to $200. The other part is about the FS being empowered to authorize operators, that is airline and helicopter companies, to retain the APDT collected to offset the administrative fees and applications for refunds and exemptions, and that it does not form part of the general revenue. Now, in the first part of my speech, I will focus on the discussions on the APDT hike and their concerns. And in the second half of my speech, I will also speak on the BC's concerns on the streamlined administrative arrangements. Deputy President, as a member of the Bills Committee, along with other members, we note the views of the tourism and aviation industries. There is a prevailing concern about the hike being too substantial and whether it will affect the low-cost carriers and the ticket price for long-haul flights, because they cost only several $100s, and if the APDT is now $200, then together with the airport construction fee and the security fees, there will be a substantial increase for especially short-haul, low-cost tickets. And I want to emphasize that our advantage lies in frequent flights and many routes in operation to meet the needs of business travelers. As I pointed out at the Bills Committee, the aforesaid points have to do with the policy in general. In fact, I asked the administration whether a price-sensitive analysis has been conducted, including the impact on transit passengers and the impact on low-cost carriers. I'm happy to learn that the administration has heeded the views of the Bills Committee and the sector, and that the exemption will be extended from passengers departing from Hong Kong the same day to transit passengers departing from Hong Kong by aircraft on the next calendar day. That means a maximum of 48 hours. I think this can help promote multiple destination tourism. Before reaching the final destination, transit passengers can stay shortly in Hong Kong and have a first-hand experience on our cuisine and the unique charm. We can also bring benefits to the retail, food and beverage, and hotel industries, whilst bolstering our status as a tourism hub. It's a win-win. In 2024, some 800,000 flights arrived in Hong Kong. And the passengers arrived in Hong Kong, and these are transit passengers leaving the next day. I hope that the extension can be submitted to the Legislative Council for scrutiny as quickly as possible. The administration will also expand the aviation network. More should be done to explore routes to Belt and Road countries, where we should also enhance the connectivity of airport networks. There should be more frequent flights to the Belt and Road countries. However, on another pivotal point, the administration has failed to conduct a scientific analysis on the impact of the APDT hike on the overall economic situation and our competitiveness. So I have reservations. Deputy President, this bill empowers the Financial Secretary to authorize, operate, or approve the operators to retain part of the tax collected for offsetting the administration fees payable to them, and the retained fees do not form part of the general revenue under Section 3(1) of the Public Finance Ordinance. This is a streamlined arrangement for the FST Bureau to better prepare the estimates, and that the administration fees will now come under the Civil Aviation Department. There is no need to credit the fees to the relevant revenue account. I notice that the existing ordinance do not include the proposed amendments, and at the clause-by-clause scrutiny, I asked the administration to clarify the relevant arrangements and whether it goes against the requirements under the Public Finance Ordinance, that all tax revenues should be credited to the revenue account. According to the administration, this is in line with the practice, and that means retaining the administrative fees for the purpose of offsetting. And the Department of Justice also confirms that this is in line with the requirements in the Public Finance Ordinance. Deputy President, I understand that after putting in place the streamlined arrangements, the annual estimates will no longer include the administration fees of the Civil Aviation Department. I questioned the administration as to the level of transparency and whether this will be subject to public scrutiny. I'm happy to learn from the administration that the CAD will announce and publish the relevant fees.
Mr. Frankie Yik, Deputy President, the government is facing a fiscal deficit. In order to balance the books, the government has proposed measures to increase revenue. That includes also cutting back on expenditure. One of the measures is to, starting from the 1st of October 2025, the air passenger departure tax will be increased from $120 to $200, which is an increase of about 60%. Apart from Mr. Perry Yu, as well as those representing the airline companies, they expressed concerns about this measure because it might undermine our airport's competitiveness as well as the pace for recovering the aviation industry. With the COVID epidemic, we have seen a huge reduction in terms of the number of flights, And we also resumed travel slower than the other cities. That's why we are lagging behind in terms of the recovery of our aviation industry. With 2 years of effort, we have restored about to 90% of the capacity compared to pre-COVID level. In 2024, on the 18th of November, the 3 one-way system was commissioned. It is expected by 2035, every year, the system can deal with about 1 trillion tons of goods, as well as about 120 million passengers. The airport authority has been expanding collaboration with airports in the GBA, including the Zhuhai Airport. This is including the measure of Fly via Zhuhai scheme. Now that the government is proposing an air departure tax increase, this will undermine our competitiveness, and this runs counter to the effort of the airport authority. Also, we've been trying to promote the idea of tourism is everywhere to attract visitors to Hong Kong. At the same time, we are proposing this tax hike. This defeats the purpose. Passengers nowadays have to pay $120 of departure tax, $90 or $160 of airport construction fee depending on the flight, and there are also $65 of passenger security charge as well as fuel costs. And all these fees amount to hundreds of dollars, and the fees might be higher than a ticket of a low-cost carrier. The 3 one-way system is supposed to reduce the burden on passengers. While now the government is increasing the air departure tax, this is not understandable. $120 of air departure tax is lower than that in Japan and Singapore. After the tax hike, the tax will be higher than these countries. Also, the Bao'an Airport in Shenzhen and the Baiyun Airport in Guangzhou, they do not charge security charge as well as air departure tax. And the fee level is lower than in Hong Kong in terms of the fuel surcharge. The 2 airports I mentioned in the mainland have been expanding. They are more competitive to Hong Kong. After we've raised the tax to $200, the difference between our fees as well as that of other airports will increase. For short-haul passengers, they may switch to airports in the mainland, and this will definitely undermine our competitiveness. It is expected that $1.6 billion of additional revenue will be brought to our public coffers after the tax hike. However, the number of flights may be affected. The supply chain within the aviation industry, including meal provision as well as aircraft maintenance and baggage handling, will be affected. Tourism industry, F&B, catering, hotel, as well as the transport industry will also be affected, and this is not worth it. And the capacity of the so-called belly may be affected as well. The International Aviation Transport Association, IATA, said that half of the goods rely on passenger flights. If there is a reduction in terms of the number of flights, the freight capacity will be affected, and this will undermine our status as an international transport hub. Given the economic environment uncertainty as well as our slow pace in economic recovery, some members of the Bills Committee suggested that there should be a phased approach in terms of rolling out the tax hike. This is the demand of the aviation industry. However, the administration said that it has taken into account the inflationary rate over the past 20-some years. Therefore, it did not accept our proposal. In the GBA, we see huge engine in terms of the growth of the aviation industry, and there are lots of passengers in the GBA that travel to other places. In order to boost our attractiveness, it is suggested that we should exempt the air departure tax for GBA travelers. We should also exempt the transiting time for passengers. The administration undertook to study exempting a tax for passengers who are transiting in Hong Kong that took the plane to Hong Kong and switched to other transportation modes. And the transiting time can be extended from 24 to 48 hours. However, I'd still like the government to closely monitor the impact of the tax hike to the transportation and aviation industry to ensure our status as an international airport and an international aviation and logistics hub. I so submit I speak in support of the bill. Thank you. Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Thank you, Chairman. The administration suggested increasing the air departure tax from $120 to $200. Our party suggested in our budget proposal that in order to increase revenue, increasing the air departure tax is one option. This is because we are not affecting the grassroots and the overall impact on members of the public would not be significant. 20 years ago, we raised the tax from $80 to $120. If we impose the same increase, it should be from $120 to $180. During the scrutiny of the bill, I listened to the views of the industry. They expressed concerns about the tax hike, and I understand their concerns. The goal of this year is to have 50 million of passengers to Hong Kong. From January to April, we saw about 1.6 million passengers. Last month, we had 3.8 million passengers. In order to meet the 50 million passenger goal, we have a half-half chance. If we are to increase the tax by November, we may see more challenges in meeting our goal. I heard concerns from low-cost carriers. Passengers who opt for low-cost carriers, they want to save costs on their airfares as much as possible. For example, they would not have meals on the plane. By raising the tax, would it further stifle the operating room for low-cost carriers? During the Bills Committee discussion, I proposed a phased approach. We could first increase the tax to $160, then we can increase it to $200 2 years later. The government may see a reduction of tax revenue by about $800 million within the 2 years. That's not very significant. The administration explained that if it adopts a phased approach, it may give people the impression that it keeps increasing the tax. I don't agree. If we adopt a phased approach, airline companies would understand that, they would accept that, and they would adjust their airfares accordingly. And also, air passengers may not take note of the increase if we adopt a phased approach, so it is better than adopting a one-step approach. I learned from the relevant labor union groups, and they said that they would like more passengers coming to Hong Kong. They hope that there would be minimal impact of the air departure tax on passengers. Therefore, I agreed with Mr. Perry Yu. I believe that we should increase the tax to $160 instead, but our proposed amendments were not passed during the Bills Committee stage. Our party suggested in the budget proposal that the government could consider increasing the air departure tax to increase tax revenue, but $200 is a bit higher than our expectation. The government responded to the trade's views on exempting certain passengers from the tax. For those who leave Hong Kong on the same day, they could be exempted from paying the tax, and those who leave on the following day, they can also be exempted from paying the fee now. I believe that this could help promote the business for the catering industry and the relevant sectors. I so submit I speak in support of the bill. Dr. Tan Yueheng.
In the Chief Executive's policy address, he talked about strengthening Hong Kong's finances by increasing source of income. One of the initiatives is to adjust the airport passenger the air passenger departure tax from $160 to $200. The extent of increase is substantial. The additional revenue generated is not huge. It's only $1.6 billion. The impact on the competitiveness of our airport is significant. The last time when it was adjusted, it was 28 years ago, and the extent of increase is comparable to the rate of accumulated inflation, so it is reasonable. It is very difficult to find a panacea to increase source of revenue. We look at the sustainability of the type of taxes. I understand and I support the bill. I hope that to a certain extent the initiative will alleviate the financial burden on the government. I ask the government to take on board the views of stakeholders and members. I'm glad to learn that I hope that they will remove they will increase the exemptions so that people on transit will benefit. There is also the arrangements of paying the administration fees. It will streamline the process. It also saves the convoluted way of transfer of the sum. This is an improvement. I agree with that. The government has been saying that the increase of $80 is affordable. They said there will be a minimum impact on how it will affect travelers' preference. But we do need to consider that even $1 increase is an increase. We face competition from airports from nearby areas. We have to be aware the psychological impact from the proposed increase. The overall fees charged is quite high. It's about 365 one of the items, which is quite high. So the cost of transit is higher than other airports. Passengers may choose some other airports to fly out. To a certain extent, there is an impact. Our tourism industry is recovering. If we increase the tax at this moment in time, it will affect the optics. The government should work to increase our aviation network and supporting facilities. We can work to establish a short-haul network with the GBA. We can also improve our service quality. We give travelers a better experience to make them feel that it's value for money. We need to make travelers think that the increase is well worth it. We ask the government to further relax the exemption. Passengers arriving from sea and land transport should receive the exemption. I ask the government to look into this. A portion of the increase can be transformed into benefits to travelers. Say, for example, increase the use of certain facilities at the airport. This will give them the incentive to travel. This will consolidate the competitiveness of Hong Kong's airport. I also suggest to the government that there should be a dynamic assessment of the financial situation. When our finances increase, there should be an adjustment on the amount of tax. I speak in support of the bill. Mr. Loweikok. The FS in February announced its budget. He announced that from 2025 to 26 in the third quarter, air passenger departure tax will increase from $120 to $200. It is expected that there will be an additional revenue by $1.6 billion a year. A number of members have spoken, expressing their views. In the second reading debate, resumption of the appropriation bill and the committee stage, I have spoken. I said that overall speaking, I supported the appropriation bill 2025. When it comes to the increase of the departure tax, I have reservation. I am an incumbent member of the board of the airport authority. Well, I speak from the overall perspective, not just from the airport. I fully understand that the FS faces difficulties in tackling financial problems. But when it comes to making changes, caution must be exercised. We have to maintain Hong Kong's attraction and competitiveness. The third runway was fully commissioned last year. The airport authority also announces the airport city development. They all want to build our airport into a landmark. We face keen competition. If we want to attract passengers and travelers, we have to overcome these difficulties. This is an increase of about 70%. This will increase the total fees charged by our airport compared to those by other airports. This will dampen the incentive for travelers to come to Hong Kong for transit. In reply to our questions, the FS said that at this moment, there was no plan to make adjustments of the $200 air passenger departure tax. But I urge the administration to look into other more pragmatic matters to reduce the negative impact of the increase. I'm happy to learn that the administration's been talking to stakeholders. They will relax the exemption. The exemption was limited to same-day travelers on transit, but now, after the relaxation, transit passengers who stay in Hong Kong for 1 day will receive the exemption. Hopefully, travelers will stay in Hong Kong and spend. The administration said that they will work on the subsidiary legislation, hoping to launch the relaxed exemption on the 1st of October this year. There is a proposal to extend the exemption to transit passengers on different borders to attract travelers to use Hong Kong's airport as their transit location. The administration has started a negotiation with stakeholders. When they have ironed out the details, the legislation will come to the LegCo for early implementation. The administration has taken on board our views. I welcome that. I hope the administration will launch more passengers to attract transit passengers to stay in Hong Kong. I look forward to a future review of the departure tax. One of the proposed increase in fees in the budget will affect people coming to Hong Kong to work. It has nothing to do with the bill, but I ask for your indulgence. If you want to come to Hong Kong, you have to apply for a visa. It will cost you $320. When you make the application, you have to pay $600 after the revision. And if you want an extension, you will have to pay another $600 to $1,300. The revised measure came into place on the 26th of February. For people who come to Hong Kong to work for a long term, that the impact will be minimal. However, for those who come to Hong Kong to work for a short time, say for example, who work in a concert, musicians who work in musical performance, the increase is a large amount. I asked the administration to give consideration and propose alleviation measures to lighten their burden. I speak in support of the bill.
Mr. Martin Liao, President, according to the Financial Secretary's estimation, the deficit will be some $67 billion for fiscal year 2024 to 25. Now, in his budget, he announced that the air passenger departure tax will be increased from $120 to $200 per passenger, generating another $1.6 billion in additional revenue. Now, it will commence operation on the 1st of October this year. The last adjustment to the APDT was in 2003. It was increased from $80 to $120. During this period, the accumulated inflation rate was some 64%. The increase is commensurate to the increase in the rate of air passenger departure tax. I consider the increase to be reasonable. Now, the 60% increase seems to be steep, but in fact, it is just an additional fee of $80. Back then, when the last increase was imposed to the APDT in 2003, there were 21 million visitors visiting Hong Kong in that year. It was a record high. Now, since we are working to eliminate the deficit, we need to show determination by adding the tax. Now, there are worries that the increase in APDT would hurt Hong Kong's competitiveness as an international aviation hub, but there is no actual proof to that claim. The worries seem to be based on herd mentality and conjectures. I don't hear any other alternatives to increase the revenue of the government. Now, after considering our suggestions, the government has decided to extend the exemption scope to passengers departing on the next day, that is a maximum of 48 hours of stay in Hong Kong. Compared with Singapore and Tokyo and Seoul, the exemption is only for those departing within 24 hours. It is a more relaxed exemption scope, and the fees collected can be used to enhance the traveling experience of tourists by improving our airports. It can enhance our competitiveness as an international aviation hub. The government should promote our advantages to tourists and promote the one journey, single journey, multiple stop itinerary, and encourage tourists to make a stopover in Hong Kong to spend money. President, whether a place is attractive and competitive is not relied upon the level of air passenger departure tax. Popular tourist destinations like France, starting from 2002, every passenger is charged a maximum of $160 in green tax. But it didn't hurt the competitiveness of France as a tourism country. In 2024, 89 million visitors visited France. Before the tax, there were only 40 million visitors. Now, for the UK, starting from 2020, the airport tax was increased to £84, equivalent to 890 Hong Kong dollars. That's a tax imposed on economy class passengers. For business class passengers, it was as high as 1,900 Hong Kong dollars. In 2022, some 31 million visitors visited the UK. That was before the tax was imposed. In 2023, after the tax was imposed, the number increased to 37 million visitors. Now the case is clear for the UK. Now for Japan, which is a favorite destination for Hong Kongers, they are more willing to increase the departure tax from 1,000 yen to 5,000 yen, equivalent to some 272 Hong Kong dollars, a five-fold increase. But I believe Hong Kongers will not be deterred by the additional air passenger departure tax in going to Japan. It shows that the level of departure tax is not the major consideration behind traveling decision. The key is to galvanize our brand as a tourism hub, rather than using departure tax as an excuse for failure. Now, the government has just announced the 9 major tourist hotspots covering cultural and heritage, as well as hiking trails. It also includes disciplinary services quarters. Now, under the new normal, travelers are more attracted to local characteristics. Now, these hotspots, the list of hotspots was formulated upon gauging the stakeholders' views and tourist opinions. Now, we hope that we can make use of the additional tax to create more attractive hotspots to attract tourists. The increase in tax will help alleviate the fiscal pressure. The inflationary increase is justifiable. I hope that the administration will review the level of air passenger departure tax in due course. There should be a mechanism for regular review and adjust the level of air passenger departure tax. I support the bill. Mr. Rockchen, President, I declare interest. I'm a board member of the Hong Kong AA. I speak in support of the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. I support increasing the rates of air passenger departure tax from $120 to $200 per passenger to expand the revenue. The last adjustment was 22 years ago. Today, our economy and prices have grown exponentially. Fiscal deficits remains high. The government is obliged to be prudent in expanding revenue. Now, this adjustment will bring about $1.6 billion in additional revenue. Now, the impact is far-reaching. We need to pay attention to the competitiveness of our airlines and also Hong Kong's long-term development prospects as an international aviation hub. At the moment, the airport is charging airport construction fee some $60 to $160 for economy class passengers. For business and first class passengers, it is $180 per passenger. The increase in APDT would be detrimental if there are no mitigation measures. It will hurt our position as an international aviation hub and hurt travelers' enthusiasm for Hong Kong. Some 20% of our air passengers are transit passengers. We need to attract more airlines to establish routes in Hong Kong, especially those running short-haul routes. We need to expand our aviation network and maintain our attractiveness to transfer passengers. If the increase in APDT is too steep, it would drive up costs and drive passengers to choose other airports. Let me give you some figures. According to the 2024 figures, The HKIA has handled some 55 million visitors. For Bao'an Airport in Shenzhen, there were some 61 million travelers. Baiyun Airport in Guangzhou has received 76 million visitors. The statistics clearly show that in terms of the transit and transfer markets, the region is very competitive. Now, Guangzhou and Shenzhen airports have been developing their ancillary facilities for transit. The capacity has exceeded our international airports. Indeed, there are many alternatives to our airports. That's why we must enhance our value-added services and ancillary facilities to enhance travel experience to maintain our competitiveness. Dr. Lo Wai-kwok and other members, as well as I, sent a letter to the Financial Secretary to extend the exemption scope to passengers departing on the next day. I thank the administration for accepting the proposal from the Bills Committee. Now, the exemption scope has been extended from passengers departing on the same day to the next day. That is a maximum of 48 hours. It will benefit some 800,000 travelers. Now, there will be $1.6 billion revenue foregone, but that would offer an opportunity for short-haul travelers to make a brief stop in Hong Kong to get a taste of our attraction. It will boost consumption in the tourism and retail sectors. It also shows that the government has struck a balance between creating revenue stream and boosting our industries. This is a win-win and pragmatic solution. Now, the government is considering to accept the Bills Committee's proposal, that is to extend the exemption scope to transit travelers arriving by sea and by land. A timetable will be announced soon. Now, transit travelers can arrive at Hong Kong by sea or by land and transit at our airport. It will become a key opportunity for us to become a key transit hub in the region. It will enhance the airport's competitiveness and consolidate our position as an international aviation hub. I so submit I support the bill.
Mr. Benson, look. President, we're here to discuss the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. This bill aims to adjust the air passenger departure tax from $120 to $200. The rate of increase is about 67%. While we are faced with fiscal deficit, this is the measure that we have to take. The trade and community have questions about the increase. Will the $80 increase drive passengers away from Hong Kong International Airport, or even discourage them from coming to Hong Kong? As a representative from the business sector, I know that various industries are faced with hardship under the prevailing economic circumstances. I've heard about the trade's worries, and they have proposed some solutions. Some trade practitioners told me that the hotel, airline industries are worried about the move. The trade is concerned about the impact caused to low-cost carrier. The air tickets of these carriers is about a few $100s. The $200 air passenger departure tax coupled with other charges will cause the air ticket price doubling. And this will discourage those cost carriers from creating new flight routes to Hong Kong. And this may also affect travelers who are price sensitive, especially those that are short or medium haul travelers. Some of them may switch to Shenzhen or Guangzhou airports. They may even make use of the express rail link to come to Hong Kong instead. People are worried that this will undermine our competitiveness as an international aviation hub. After COVID, the SAR government promoted the development of the tourism industry, and last year they promulgated the blueprint on the development of tourism 2.0. They strive to explore new markets from the Middle East and ASEAN countries to consolidate Hong Kong's role as an international aviation hub, expand transit passengers pool, and promote multi-destination tourism. With airlines creating more flight routes, the administration is working with aircraft operators in exploring new markets. I see that currently 80% of long-haul travelers make a stopover in Hong Kong before going to the mainland or other Asian countries such as South Korea and Japan. The trade is confused, however. As we are trying to fight for long-haul and transit passengers, how come we are increasing the air passenger departure tax by 67%? For this, I asked in the Bills Committee meeting if we could introduce a sunset clause to the bill. And linking the rate of increase for the tax with inflation may result in the relevant tax only increasing but not decreasing. I think the government should review the tax regularly and assess the impact cost to the people. The administration said that they will not adjust the tax solely based on inflation rate. They will have regards to other factors such as the government fiscal position before they make another adjustment. The government said that they will review tax policies when they draft each and every budget. So I ask the government to review and adjust the tax when the economic situation becomes better. Now, the exemptions for the tax is now extended to passengers departing from Hong Kong on the next calendar day. In order for us to attract more transit passengers, we have to roll out more incentives and concessions to make sure that more transit passengers will come and perhaps stay in our city and spend the night here. I hope that the administration will take on board the views of me and the Bills Committee members by considering extending the exemptions to transit passengers arriving by sea and land to offset the decrease in the number of travelers because of the tax increase. At the same time, I think that the administration should work with aircraft operators to offer transit concessions and discounts. We should also roll out more tourism products so that travelers, when they make a transit here, will spend the night and stay here. Thank you. Mr. Gary Zhang. Thank you, President. I am a member of the Bills Committee. I said multiple times that I object to the substantial increase of the APDD. However, the members' motion to move an amendment was denied. Now, I'd like to talk about my points in 3 different areas. I will object to the bill today. The justifications for the increase is to meet the fiscal deficit and to create revenue for the government. But is there an overriding need for the community to increase such a tax? The central government said multiple times that we have to strengthen our counter-cyclical measures, given our lackluster market. Is the tax increase the solution? I don't think so. Our goal now is very clear. We have to boost economy, promote development. The 3 runway systems was fully commissioned last year. The passenger throughput is only 70% of the pre-pandemic level. In order to exhaust the capacity of the 3 runway systems, we have to increase the passenger throughput substantially. This is a strategic goal of developing Hong Kong into an international aviation hub. And this goal should override our fiscal or short-term financial needs. While we are trying to attract passengers and travelers, it's not reasonable for us to increase tax. At the same time, the government quoted the increase in the number of travelers coming to Hong Kong despite the increase of construction fees in 2016. The increase of airport construction fee may not have an impact on the number of passengers coming. But actually, at the same time, the two runway systems was almost exhausted. So the demand was rather inelastic at the time. However, today, there is insufficient demand, and we are now faced with fierce competition from neighboring cities. The transport network in the Greater Bay Area is now more convenient. Travelers have more choice these days. The price sensitivity today is different from that in 2016. So we should not justify the tax increase by quoting the 2016 figures. From the economic perspective, airline services is a price-elastic product. Referencing airport authorities' figures, about 60% of passengers are short-haul passengers. Many of them choose low-cost carriers. They are very price-sensitive to the air tickets, and the tax accounts for a high percentage in the total air ticket price. The administration did not analyze the price sensitivity of different groups of travelers, and they did not account for the impact caused to potential passengers. The government said multiple times that we should not compete for passengers with low prices. That's true, but that just doesn't justify the tax increase. The raise of 67% from $120 to $200 is in line with the inflation rate. But now we have airport construction fees, fuel surcharge, passenger security charges. Altogether, they are some $300. That's 3 to 4 folds of the level in 2003. This actually affects the cost of the value for money for our service. We are now fully aware of the competitiveness, competition that we're facing. We shouldn't just justify the tax increase just by saying that we don't compete for passengers with low prices or low costs. I hope that the administration will take a look at the Shenzhen airport to see how many Hong Kong travelers are taking flights there. At restaurants in Shenzhen airports, you will be able to see many Hong Kong people there speaking Cantonese. People are voting with their foots. President, the Hong Kong aviation industry is at a critical juncture. We have to expand the market instead of being short-sighted by increasing the tax. The only benefit to this tax increase is to generate revenue for Treasury, but that will affect the airline company, travel agencies, and travelers, passengers related industries. This will undermine our position as the international aviation hub. So I don't think that the government should harm our position. Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Low. Thank you. In 2025, there is this bill, Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill. The proposal is to increase the air passenger departure tax from $120 to $200. I was a member of the Bills Committee. I would like to speak on the amount and discussions we've had. With financial pressure, the administration wanted to adjust the fees. The tax was revised a long time ago. They have reason to make another adjustment. The increase will result in additional revenue by $1.6 billion, which is about 0.25% of the rates. In general, members agree with the adjustment. They agree with the direction. However, the extent of the increase as well as the details are something that we could not agree on. The increase will put pressure on the airline industry in Hong Kong. The third runway was commissioned last year. There was a capacity of $54 billion. If we are to increase it back to our original level of $90 billion, then we need to keep our competitiveness to attract more airliners, especially budget airlines, to come to Hong Kong. We need to maximize the use of our airport. When you leave from Hong Kong airport, you have to pay the departure tax and the construction fees of $90, the passenger security charge, and the fuel surcharge. So excluding the air ticket, you have to pay about $400 in fees and surcharges. This is a huge burden on travelers. It will affect their choice of airport. They may even choose another mode of transport to travel. We need to be extra cautious. We need to consider the impact on the tourism industry and the aviation industry. Overall policies should be considered. In neighboring airports, they have done a lot on expansion and improvement of their services. Budget airlines may switch to airports with a lower tax. This will affect capacity. Between 2020 and 2024, the market for budget airline has been increasing, and they account for 91% of the overall passengers. So we don't just look at the additional revenue. We have to balance the development of the industry. For an expensive air ticket, an additional couple of $100 in tax is nothing. But if the air ticket is just a few $100s, that will be a huge amount. I asked the administration to review the situation to ensure that the move will not stifle industry development, and that it will not deter passengers from using our airport. Last week we talked about we had a debate on a motion on and strengthening our position as an international tourism hub. We talk about enhancing travelers' experience. If we do not have high quality facilities and service, then it will dampen the travelers' experience, and they may not come to Hong Kong. The government agreed to relax the exemption to passengers departing on the next calendar day. I welcome that. I look forward to the subsidiary legislation to be introduced in Hong Kong. Passengers can go to Tung Chung or the airport city to spend. The government can also discuss with the airport authority. Special deals can be offered to travelers to improve their experience. It will also boost consumption at the airport. We need to strike a balance between maintaining our financial position and the development of the trade. Mr. II.Govt. The government's trying to improve the financial situation. The adjustment will result in a revenue increase by $1.6 billion. The last time it was adjusted, it was 203. The extent of the increase is about $80, which is minimal. That may be the case. The public have reservations. The tourism industry criticizes the proposal, saying that they are pushing passengers away while they try to attract them. I'm a head of a primary school. I would like to tell you what I think. A lot of schools arrange their students to take part in competitions or in study tours. They may go to nearby provinces or overseas. They may travel by plane. So these activities will be affected by the increase in departure tax. Some people may think that $80 is within the affordability of schools and parents. But don't forget, there are other measures. Starting from September, the 2,500 student allowance was scrapped, but will be scrapped. There are also plans to reduce subsidies. A student subsidy to enrich students' learning experience will be reduced. I think as a result, schools will reduce the number of activities organized for students. They may not arrange for their students to leave Hong Kong to take part in different events. Every time our school organizes outside activities, some parents will refuse to take part because of the fees. Some parents will have to try to get the money to have so that children can take part. Reallocation of resources to meet demand is a reasonable approach, but when it comes to taxes, the overall situation should be taken into account. The affordability should be one factor to be taken into account. Without good justification, it will not be accepted by the public. Now we have the cups, the giant panda cups have been named, but sometimes people think that the name may suggest that there will be an increase in fees. I think it's about how do you do it.
Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, President. I declare interest. I'm a board member of the AA. I'm also a director of a hotel group. Now we are in the second reading debate of the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. The bill seeks to increase the rate of air passenger departure tax from $120 to $200. Now my proposal was accepted by the administration so that the exemption scope has been expanded to cover passengers departing on the next day. The government will also study extending the exemption to passengers arriving by land and by sea. But the increase in the rate will hurt our recovery. It also brings a negative impact on our airport trade. Now, we proposed a halved increase and a sunset clause to the bill, but the administration did not accept our proposal. That's why I'm going to vote against the bill. Now, with the intense geopolitical tension, the Russian-Ukraine war and also the war elsewhere, the trade war is going on. It posed uncertainty to the recovery of our aviation industry. Now, despite on the path of recovery, our pace is slower than our neighbors. Now, airports in our neighboring places have exceeded the pre-pandemic level. In 2024, the air passenger capacity has only recovered to 74% of 2019 and 71% of 2018. Now, despite the continuous growth of air passenger in the first 4 months to 20 million passengers with an increase of 17%, but the increase has topped out. Now, based on this trend, it will not be until 2027 when we can recover to the pre-pandemic peak, that is 74 million passengers. Now, with the commissioning of the third runway system, our target is to achieve 120 million passengers each year, but that's nowhere in sight. We need to enhance our efforts to draw for passengers and businesses. It's a critical juncture, and the increase in APDT is counterintuitive. It is working against the goal. Now, many members in the Bills Committee, including me, consider that the government has not conducted an objective analysis and in-depth assessment on the impact of the increase. According to the ACI's survey, every 10% increase in airport tax will lead to a reduction of 0.9% in passenger number. Now, according to this increase, it will bring about a reduction of 3 million air passengers. It can't justify the increase. Now, the government has quoted the figures between 2016 to 2018 to justify the minimal impact of the increase. But it was a time when the airport's capacity was reached. The situation was very different. Now, I've always raised the issue of expensive airport tax in Hong Kong. Now, some may say that the increase is just $80, but don't forget the airport construction fee and the passenger security charge. Single-way short-haul air ticket is now $355. For long-haul air tickets, the tax is $425. The tax level is highest in Asia. That's excluding the fuel surcharge. After the tax hike, it will hurt the recovery of our airport's capacity. It is foreseeable that the tax increase will dampen the interest among price-sensitive travelers. The travel patterns have changed significantly, and they are more and more sensitive to price fluctuations because of the poor economy. This group of travelers will choose other alternatives like the high-speed rail or choose budget airlines. Now, with such a high tax, it will also hurt the competitiveness of our budget airlines. Other budget airlines will be deterred from establishing routes in our market. It will weaken the development of the budget airline business in Hong Kong and weaken our airport's competitiveness. In this year's budget, during the second reading debate of the appropriation bill, the financial secretary mentioned that we never compete with others in terms of cheap prices. We focus on quality. I agree. Our core competitiveness lies in our frequent flights as well as convenient transit services. But that doesn't mean that there is room for us to be more expensive than others. We are underestimating the impacts of the increase in tax on passengers. We can't afford to be complacent. President, just now Mr. II.Govt mentioned that parents are sensitive to increase in tax. Now, I have received complaints as well. Some tourist companies have won the tender for study tours from the Education Bureau, but now with the increase of $80 in tax, they are scratching their heads. Now, for airlines would retain parts of the tax for administration fees, but that do not cover the management cost. Now, we need to cut spending in every area, and we need to find new revenue stream. I understand how difficult it is. Now, I proposed the halved increase in rates, but it was not accepted by the administration. Still, I thank the government for accepting our proposal to extend the exemption scope to passengers departing on the next calendar day. The Secretary has promised to study extending the exemption scope to passengers arriving by sea and by land and attract more GBA travelers to use our airports. Now, I hope the government will continue to listen to the trade and set the timetable and details of the exemption scope and introduce the subsidiary legislation for our scrutiny. Now, besides extending the exemption scope, I suggested that the Transport and Logistics Bureau and the AA should study the procedures for tax refund. Now, transit passengers can enjoy tax refund within the same day in the same transit building. Now, for those applying for a refund by email or post, the time frame is longer, as long as 29 days. Now, I hope that the procedures can be simplified. Refund can be remitted to electronic wallet immediately. Or better yet, we can encourage the passengers to spend the $200 refund in the airport. Now, I mentioned last week in the Council motion debate that we need to translate the capacity to overnight stays in Hong Kong. To do that, we need to enhance ancillary facilities in the airports. Now, I entrusted the electrical research units to study the airports of our neighboring countries. That is, the airports in Singapore and Seoul. They have made the airports family-friendly and characteristic. We can learn a lot of experience from them. Now, there is a sea change in the aviation industry in the world. With the commissioning of the free one-way system, we need to catch up in terms of passenger volume. We need to grow the cake. That's the urgent task. I hope the government would be prudent in mooling tax hike. Now, I understand that it is very improbable that the bill will not pass. But I hope the government will speed up working on enlarging the tax exemption scope and turn the transit passengers into inbound passengers. Thank you. Mr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, President. I declare interest. I am an observer on the Tourism Council. Now, in the budget, the Financial Secretary announced that in 2025 and 26, in the third quarter, the APDT will be increased from $120 to $200, with $1.6 billion in additional tax revenue. This bill will implement that proposal. But I have some reservations on this tax increase. There are three reasons. First of all, increasing the air passenger departure tax will cause negative impacts on our position as an international aviation hub. We have all along been an important aviation hub in the Asian Pacific region. We attract more than 10 million passengers to transit via Hong Kong. The government claims that the increase poses little impacts on the traveling pattern, but in the long run, it may drive passengers away from us. Now, in recent years, nearby airports like the airports in Singapore and also Incheon airports in Seoul, and also large airports in the country like Baiyun and Bao'an airports, have taken proactive measures to attract airlines and passengers. For example, low taxes, flexible flight arrangements, and convenient and cheap transit services. Now, with the increase in air passenger departure tax, it will increase the cost of traveling. and hurts our attractiveness to passengers and airlines. Now, in recent years, the AA has been promoting the intermodal travel pattern. Travelers can arrive at our airports from Guangzhou and Dongguan through the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge and other means. However, with the similar capacity in Macau and other places near Hong Kong, passengers may choose other airports. Now, this is a critical juncture of recovery. It may drive more passengers to our competitors, thus weakening our competitiveness as an international aviation hub. Second, with the third runway fully commissioned last year, the airport has become much busier. Now, the record high passenger volume was back in 2018. There were 74 million passengers. In early 2023, we entered the recovering phase. Now, cargo volume has recovered to number 1 in the world. For air passenger, there were 40 million. Last year, the volume increased to 55.9 million passengers, 80% of the pre-pandemic level. Now, according to the trend, in the future, the third runway will help us boost the volume to 120 million passengers. It shows that there is still much room for expansion in terms of cargo and passenger volume. The government should fully utilize the third runway to consolidate our position as an aviation hub and form a world-class aviation cluster together with other airports in the Bay Area. Aviation recovery is evidence of our overall economic recovery. Now, with more and more intense competition in the region, we need to make more efforts to grow the cake and grow the cluster, rather than raising the airport air passenger departure tax and hurt our competitiveness. 3, it will increase the cost of airline and dampen growth for airlines, especially for budget airlines with cheap tickets. The impact for them is significant. Few of them will establish routes in Hong Kong. Some of them may even close their flight routes. It will shrink the source markets for them, and it will hurt the market in the long run. Now, for budget airlines, the air tickets usually cost a few $100s only. With the myriads of taxes, for example, airport construction fee and passenger security charge, the final price will be close to normal airlines. It will hurt their competitiveness, and more short to medium haul passengers will switch to cheaper alternatives like the high-speed rail or airports with cheaper fees like the Shenzhen and Guangzhou airports. Now, with the looming trade war, Cathay, the largest player in the field, has announced that their business would be impacted, not to mention other airlines. Now, of course, we can't just focus on the additional revenue. Each year, we need to focus on the long-term developments of the aviation industry. I suggest the government to conduct timely review on the impacts of the increase in tax and adjust it in due course.
Mr. Tan Ka-pil. Thank you, President. On behalf of the FTU, I speak in support of the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. The tax will be raised from $120 to $200 per passenger. We know that various industries have different views regarding the increase, but given our fiscal deficit, we have to increase government revenue. This adjustment will bring about an additional $1.6 billion to the government. Local residents and foreign travelers will shoulder the burden together. By this, we don't have to increase taxes that affect people's livelihood or their day-to-day lives. The Bills Committee discussed the possibility of imposing the tax in phases. I think that the one-step approach adopted by the government is more appropriate. If we increase the taxes in phases, then people may have this impression that we are increasing taxes every year. If we increase the tax in one go, then over the short run, the impact cost will be mitigated very soon, and travelers would be able to adapt to the new move more quickly. The competitiveness of the Hong Kong International Airport is our efficiency, our flight route network, and our service quality. We don't rely on our low prices to stay competitive. With the full commissioning of the 3 one-way systems, I know that the Terminal 2 will be commissioned early next year too. We are promoting smart airport, we are building infrastructures, we are hiring people. All these require a stable stream of revenue to the government. This increase will allow the government to have a greater flexibility to cope with any volatility in the market. The administration proposed 2 exemptions to mitigate the impact caused by the increase. First, the passengers departing from Hong Kong on the next calendar day will be exempted from paying the tax. Approximately 800,000 travelers will be benefited. Second, the administration undertake to look into exempting transit passengers from the tax who are arriving by sea or land boundary control points. These Greater Bay Area travelers are more price sensitive. We want to, by exempting them from paying the fee, encourage them to spend here. We recognize the move adopted by the government. We hope that the increase will be implemented as soon as possible, so that we can protect the overall interest of the trade. President, the long-term competitiveness of the international airport is not just about cost control and our infrastructure. Instead, we have to focus on manpower, professional nurturing, and importation. I think that the government should deploy the additional revenue on upgrading the skills of the engineering trade technicians so that we can promote, say, low-altitude economy, green logistics, and aviation industry. We have to consolidate our position as an international aviation hub by nurturing talents. I so speak in support of the bill. Mr. Kenneth Falk. Thank you, President. This year's budget focuses on controlling costs and increasing revenue. Hopefully by this we can lower the fiscal deficit that we have. The government have been increasing a number of fees and charges. Given the fierce competition that we're facing, I know why the government is trying to increase this air passenger departure tax. The financial secretary said that we have to review the overall stream of revenue of the government. Tax is a part of it. We adjusted the tax some 22 years ago in 2003. We didn't adjust it for some 20 years. So I think that it's not unreasonable that we adjust the tax this year. However, travelers or tourists may not feel good about the tax increase. That's why I didn't fully support the bill at first. And I expressed my worries. Now, under the bill, passengers who depart from Hong Kong on the next calendar day will be exempted from paying the tax. This 48 hours requirement is more generous than that offered by our neighboring cities. Hopefully, we can attract more transit passengers to make use of our airport. During the Bills Committee meetings, members discussed the bill at length, and I have heard some of the objections and supporting views. Overall speaking, I support the bill. Now we have to consolidate our position as an international aviation hub. I think that we have to strengthen our advantages. Hong Kong International Airport has always been the first choice for transit passengers. The Financial Secretary said that transit passengers don't just consider the tax before they choose Hong Kong for transit. They look at other factors too. I agree with that. Since 2014, the percentage of transit passengers account for 31%, and it dropped to 22% in 2024. I think that this is a warning sign. Dubai Airport may be getting our transit passengers. Haneda Airport in Japan, the one in Singapore, also took a lot of our passengers. In 2018, the passenger throughput was 74.6 million passengers. However, in 2024, the throughput recovered to 53 million passengers. That's about 70 to 80% of the pre-pandemic level. We lose out to the Guangzhou Baiyun and Shenzhen Bao'an Airport. They have 76 million and about 60 million passengers per year, respectively. We should not make light of the situation. We have to figure out why we have fewer passengers these days. One of the most important reason is our high air ticket prices. I'm sure that you all agree that our average air ticket price is higher than the pre-pandemic level and higher than our competitors. Coupled with the airport construction fee, passenger security charges, our tax is as high as $350. That's the second highest in the Asian region. With a mere additional revenue of $1.6 billion, I don't think that's a lot. If the government faces another fiscal deficit some years later, will they further increase the tax? Now there's a trend for local people to travel to mainland to spend, and the other cities in the Greater Bay Area are improving their airport infrastructures. We shouldn't create this impression among travelers that it's expensive to take flights in Hong Kong. I think that the government have to conduct an overall and comprehensive analysis and review the impact caused by the fees and charges that we have, and we have to look at the current situation and consolidate our competitiveness. I hope that the government will look into this. We have to relax our airspace. For example, this may not be easy, but I hope that the government will look into it. With more competition, I believe that the air ticket price will go down. $80 increase in the APDT may not be a lot, but I hope that in the future we will have more competitive air ticket price offered to our passengers. As the flight routes or the flight frequency has not resumed the pre-pandemic level, with the 3 runway systems, it's now time for us to rebuild our aviation hub. In 2024 policy address, The chief executive said that we have to build ourselves into international airport city. We have to attract business travelers to come. I hope that the government will take the lead in encouraging enterprises to work with the airport authority to create a landmark in Hong Kong so that more revenues can be generated for the government. The government should support the airport authority in collaborating with Macau, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Zhuhai airports to create a win-win mechanism. The government should take the lead in organizing meetings among these airports so that we can build a stronger airport network or transit passenger markets. Overall speaking, the rate of increase of the tax may not be high. We have to, however, consolidate our competitiveness and our position as an international aviation hub. As I mentioned last week, the government must face up to the structural problems of our air ticket price. Otherwise, it would be hard for us to compete with our neighboring cities who enjoy advantage of having low air ticket price. I so speak in support of the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis Leung. Madam Deputy, I speak in support of the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. It's a simple bill. Starting from the 1st of October this year, the tax will increase from $120 to $200 per passenger. The new rate applies to those who buy an air ticket on or after the 1st of October. The government reckons that it will bring in an additional $1.6 billion a year. The tax was last adjusted in 2003. It's been 22 years. Over the 22 years, the increase will be about 2.3% a year over the 22 years. It is in line with the rate of inflation. Is what the government's supposed to do by increasing revenue to face challenges. Certain types of passengers under Cap 140, that is Air Passenger Departure Tax Ordinance, they enjoy an exemption, that is those under the age of 12, direct transit passengers, passengers who arrive at and depart from Hong Kong by aircraft on the same day, passengers who arrive at the airport by a vehicle via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge or by a ship and subsequently depart from Hong Kong by aircraft. And before the departure, they remain at all times within the restricted area. These are exemptions available. I'm sure the Hong Kong SAR government has listened to relevant views and will improve the tax regime and exemptions. There is another important part of the bill. This is to streamline the financial arrangement to ensure that government resources are effectively used. This will reduce the operational cost for the government. According to the current arrangement, airline operators will collect the departure tax, handle exemptions and refund. The amount collected will have to be transferred to government account. The government needs to pay these operators an administrative fees. Under the bill, there is a proposal to allow operators to transfer the fees after the deduction of the administration fees into the general revenue account of the government. I support the proposed streamlining arrangement. This is an important part of work under digitalization of government services. Every move has an advantage and disadvantage. The government will need to make the right move to be a responsible government. I believe that we all have to be rational in our discussion and analysis. The proposed increase will not undermine our competitiveness. Hong Kong is an international financial center. We're closely connected with the mainland. We have many tourist spots. There are always people who love Hong Kong. Even if they have to pay an additional fee, it accounts for a small part of their traveler expenditure. Other jurisdictions have similar taxes. The most important thing is that the trade will continue to improve, to do more, and to promote Hong Kong more, to keep our attraction up. But I agree with certain reservations. There may be a reduction in passengers coming to Hong Kong because of the increase, which will in turn affect our finances. After the epidemic, the tourism industry has been hard hit, but complaining will not improve the situation. We all need to work together to organize more mega events and other activities and improve the service quality. I hope the government would do more work in terms of enriching the experience of travelers, launching ecotourism certifications. All these are work waiting to be taken up by the government. The government has struck a balance between competitiveness of the trade and financial sustainability. We all need to work together, stay united, make more proposals so that the negative impact of the increase will become an opportunity for us to strengthen ourselves so that we will bring the shine back to our brand as Pearl of the Orient as well as a shopping paradise. Ms. Wendy Hong. Thank you. Under the budget, there was a proposal to increase the passenger departure tax from $120 to $200, bringing in an additional $1.6 billion. A lot of people are concerned whether it would affect our status. In 2024, the volume of passengers at the airport was $53 million compared to the peak in 2018, which is 74.6 million. This is only a 70% level. For transit passengers in 2018, the volume was 21.6 million. In 2024, there has been a drop by 10 million passengers to 11.6 million. The proposed increase may further reduce the number of passengers coming to Hong Kong. There will be an exemption for transit passengers. Those who depart Hong Kong on the same day will be exempted. After the relaxation, they can stay in Hong Kong till the next calendar day, that is about 48 hours, without having to pay the departure tax. This has addressed our concern about 800,000 passengers will receive the exemption. This will reduce the additional revenue from $1.6 billion down a bit. The proposed increase is from 120 to 200, 67% increase, which is quite hefty. The volume for passenger compared to pre-pandemic level is just 70%. Perhaps we can bringing in more travelers will increase the revenue by much more than the increase in departure tax. If the departure tax is increased to $200, it will be a huge impact on budget airlines. They may not want to stay in Hong Kong. They will want to switch to other airports to operate their routes. This will also dampen the development of our airport compared to other airports. Say, for example, those in Shenzhen and Guangzhou, our competitiveness will decrease. The trade has a point. The government should attach importance to the impact on various sectors. But I fully understand why the government does it. We have a serious deficit. We need to increase revenue. However, we need to protect the general public from the impact. Perhaps the departure tax is the only choice. I agree with the relaxation of exemption. At the same time, I have some suggestions. The relaxation of exemption is 48 hours. Perhaps we need to inject impetus into the sector. Perhaps there can be half-day or one-day tours for transit passengers. This will give transit passengers a taste for them to come back to Hong Kong. In line with the development of the airport city, perhaps there can be tours to tourist spots on Lantau Island. They can be thematic ones, say leisure, ecology, or humanities. Of course, we will need to offer transport and consumption concessions. We need to work with influencers, travel agencies, so that passengers will know about these tours and deals when they buy the air ticket. A time should be set for a review. On the 1st of August 2021, there was an adjustment on the stamp duty from 0.1% to 0.13%. In 2023, a review was conducted. The duty rate was revised back to 0.1%. There needs to be a review and introduce possible adjustments. Our policies are contradicting. It is not easy to increase revenue and cut expenditure. The departure tax will give us $1.44 billion. But at the same time, there are other waivers that will reduce our revenue. Say, for example, revenue foregone by $2.9 billion from salaries tax, profits tax, and half a month subsidy for CSSA recipients and working families. This incurred additional expenditure about $3.1 billion. All these will mean revenue foregone by $7.9 billion. The additional revenue from departure taxes doesn't help. There is also the scrapping of the $2,500 student allowance. And this will only save us about $1.97 billion. The government has given $7.9 billion in handouts. I am confused. The government should not launch contradicting policies.
Dr. So Wing. Thank you, Deputy President. Increasing the air passenger departure tax from $120 to $200 per passenger. This is a proposal in the budget to consolidate the government's budget. It is estimated that it will bring about an additional $1.6 billion in revenue. It is the major purpose of this bill. According to the administration, short, medium, and long-haul passengers spend $6,200 and $7,500 in Hong Kong, respectively. The additional tax accounts for a maximum of 1.3% of the total expenditure only, and the impact is minimal. In addition, the APDT has not been adjusted for over 20 years. During this period, the accumulative inflation rate was some 64%. The increase is commensurate with the 66% increase in air passenger departure tax. More critically, the government considers that increasing the APDT is more easily acceptable by the public compared with an increase in profits tax or tax under personal assessment. I think this is a pragmatic approach. However, there is strong opposition from the industry concerning the tax hike. Besides the APDT, passengers have to pay the airport construction fee and the security charge. Together with the increased APDT, short-haul passengers need to pay $351 in tax, and for long-haul passengers, $450. Now, budget air tickets are as cheap as several $100s. The ratio of tax is high. This will very likely affect the interest of passengers in our airport and also hurts the operation of budget airlines. At present, the number of air passengers have not returned to the peak in 2018. It is urgent to attract more passengers to come to Hong Kong. So some thinks that the proposal to increase the tax is against the general objective. Now, there are different focuses in the views of the government and the trade. Now, the task is to make passengers feel that the increase in departure tax is justified with enhanced services. Now, the government has streamlined the exemption or enhanced the exemption scope from exempting same-day transiting passengers to transit passengers departing on the next day as well. In other words, passengers can remain in Hong Kong as long as 48 hours and still enjoy an exemption. It will boost consumption locally. Now, with the efforts of the Bills Committee, the administration has agreed to study adjusting the exemption scope to passengers transiting in our airport from the GBA by land or by sea. A subsidiary legislation will be introduced into LegCo later. I think this proposal is innovative and attractive. The tax exemption and a frequent flight schedule can attract more passengers to travel and fly via Hong Kong. We can become the first stop of passengers' itinerary and boost consumption in Hong Kong. I further propose this. Since we are considering allowing tax-free transit in Hong Kong from passengers in the Bay Area, 48 hours are too short. They may transit without entering Hong Kong. So can we consider extending the stay limit to 72 hours so that more passengers will choose Hong Kong as the first stop in a multi-destination itinerary? It would give more time for tourists to spend money in Hong Kong and check into our hotels. On one hand, it will provide convenience for passengers' itinerary. On the other hand, it will bring about economic benefits to Hong Kong. Now, after the increase of APDT, for passengers to still think the price worth it, the administration must enhance the overall competitiveness of our airport, including enhancing the number of flight routes and flight schedules, and enhancing the traveling experience of passengers by adopting technologies. Our airport has always been excellent, but we can't neglect the fact that there are a lot of premium airports being built in the region. Now, last year, the airport announced that the airport city would be built. It will become an international world-class landmark, combining the functions of entertainment, leisure, and traveling. I hope the project will be materialized soon. Several years ago, the Singaporean government has built a new airport terminal with a tropical rainforest theme. It has become a famous tourist spot for international travelers. It has been awarded the title of Best Airport in the World for consecutive years. Now, I believe that with the scale of our airport and with the commissioning of the third runway system, we can compete with that airport. It's just a matter of policy support. I also submit I support the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Deputy President. I speak in support of the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. We are faced with a steep fiscal deficit. The government needs to balance its budget. The government proposed to increase the rate of APDT from $120 to $200. It's not the most ideal measure, but as a short-term emergency measure, it is inevitable. Now, the timing of this tax increase is to implement the budget consolidation proposal. Some stakeholders will inevitably be affected, but we must understand this is an extraordinary measure in extraordinary times. Now, when the fiscal positions improved, the government should conduct review on the tax rate. Now, it's commendable that the government has accepted members' proposal to extend the exemption scope for transit passengers to those departing on the next day. More international travelers will be attracted to transit in Hong Kong. It will also encourage them to make a brief stop in Hong Kong and spend money. It is beneficial for our position as an international aviation hub. I urge the government to conduct a study to extend the exemption scope to GBA passengers arriving in Hong Kong by sea and by land, and to tap the massive transit markets in the Bay Area. But we must pay attention to the risk pertaining the tax increase. Now, despite the minimal impact on long-haul passengers, for short-haul passengers, the advantages of the nearby airports will be more pronounced. Say, for example, the trip for residents in Tuen Mun traveling to the Hong Kong airport and the Shenzhen airport is similar. With the increase in tax, some residents may be driven to the airports in Shenzhen. Now we must differentiate our services and consolidate our flight routes to other continents like Australia and the Northern America. We must enhance the competitiveness of the GBA aviation cluster. Now, cheap pricing has never been our selling point. Our selling point has been a comprehensive aviation network and our high value-added services. The government should collaborate with the AA to enhance the services. For example, promoting automated custom clearance procedures, attracting more flight routes, and enhancing the connectivity with other airports in the Bay Area so that we can tap the massive markets in the mainland. Now, the government is displaying financial discipline with this bill. However, the only way to ensure that our brand can be galvanized is to ensure that we continuously enhance the service quality of our airports. I so submit.
Ms. Yong Hua-Yan, Madam Deputy, I speak in support of the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. Through adjusting the air passenger departure tax under the reinforced fiscal consolidation program, the government will have an additional revenue of $1.6 billion. Hopefully, this will consolidate our strengths as an international aviation hub. I like to raise a few points. I'd like to make reference to the tax in other places and what impact it will cause to the local market. First of all, many cities in the world charge departure tax, and the tax rate is usually higher than ours. Our tax has not been adjusted for some 20 years. I think that the rate of increase is rather moderate. We are increasing the tax from $120 to $200. I think that compared to neighboring cities in Asia, like Japan, they, since 2019, charge international tourists a 1,000 yen tax for conservation of cultural heritage and improvement of their infrastructures. Despite this tax, their tourism industry has not been affected. In 2023, there were about 31 million travelers going to Japan. In Singapore, they also have an airport development tax, and they have a differential tax for economy class passengers that is 30.3 Singaporean dollars and 70 Singaporean dollars for business and first class passengers. This level is much higher than our tax, which is just about $200. In UK, they have an airport passengers tax. The differentiate between long haul and short haul passengers, for short haul is about $130. For long haul passengers, that's about £200, approximately 2,000 Hong Kong dollars. So comparatively speaking, our adjustment is very moderate, and this complies with the principle of users pay. And this is also in line with the international trend, providing resources for our long-term development. The trade is worried if the attractiveness of Hong Kong will be affected because of the increase. But the impact is controllable. According to the 2024 survey conducted by the Tourism Council, short-haul passengers spend about $6,200 in Hong Kong. For long-haul travelers, they spend about $7,500 in Hong Kong. Compared to the $80 increase in the tax that account for only 1.1 to 1.3% of their total spending, I think that this is affordable and reasonable. Even for air ticket price from Hong Kong to Bangkok, which cost about $800 to $1,000. Asking the passengers going for this route to pay $80 more, that accounts for only 10% of the total price. I don't think that our competitiveness will be undermined because of this. The reason why people use Hong Kong International Airport to go to other places is because we have over 180 destinations connected, and our flight frequency is the highest in Asia. We have this fly via Zhuhai policy that benefits transit passengers who like to make use of Hong Kong as a transit spot. So I think that our price and charges are competitive. The government have rolled out a number of measures to mitigate the impact. The scope of exemptions will be extended from 24 hours to 48 hours to encourage travelers to stay and spend. The airport authority is also promoting the Airport City project. They are consolidating the Sky City, the Sky Pier Terminal, and the 3 one-way systems. In 2030, the Airport Authority will increase the non-airport related revenue by about 50%. We are also going to promote multi-destination tourism by combining destinations in Greater Bay Area, such as the Disneyland Resort. I think that our unique advantage and strength will not be affected by the tax increase. I think that the bill has also taken into account the interest of local people and specific industry. Children aged below 12, cabin crew, will be exempted, and the government is considering exempting also transit passengers arriving by land or sea boundary control point from paying the tax. The tax will be set under the Airport Infrastructure Fund. I think that by this we can improve the traveler satisfaction to our airport, so that they will choose to spend the night here and shop. During the scrutiny of the bill, the government received a number of submissions. People are concerned about the tax rate, impact cost to low-cost carriers. There were people who suggest differential rates, differential tax on, say, the cabin class and the flight distance of passengers. The government considered it, but they are of the view that administration cost will be very much higher if we adopt this tiered tax approach, and some 80% of the passenger actually takes economy class. I think that the government should regularly review the implementation of the policy. If we can adopt a differential tax approach, depending on the flight distance, this will be in line with the users pay principle. For short-haul passengers, they may be subject to a lower tax because, as I mentioned, people traveling to Southeast Asia, their air ticket costs just $100 or a few hundreds or $1,000. The air passenger departure tax would take up, say, 10% of the total air ticket price, and they may be discouraged from choosing the international airport here. I know that the government is trying to attract visitors from the Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, ASEAN countries. So I hope that despite the tax increase, the government will work on, say, offering more support measures for them, say, for example, for Muslim visitors. Faced with uncertainties in the global economic scenarios, I think that we should abide by our low tax regime. The government said that local residents will not be affected by this air passenger departure tax to a great extent. The government is not planning to increase the salaries tax or rates, for example. But as we are trying to attract more visitors to come and spend, I hope that the government will take into account the trade's concern and see if they will roll out more measures to make the entire system more comprehensive. Mr. Chen Hanpan. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Given the fiscal deficit, we are to increase the air passenger departure tax along with other charges, say, for example, fixed penalty for illegal parking, hospital fees, and among others. None of us want to have this air passenger departure tax increased, but we have a fiscal deficit. By increasing this tax, grassroots residents will not be as impacted. Many people have to go for specialist consultants, and they have to pay a high price for the drugs that they are prescribed with. So when the government is considering increasing any forms of fees and charges, they have to consider whether people can afford it. When the hospitals increase their fees and charges, they don't have to come to seek the approval of the Legislative Council. Now the government, when they are trying to increase the APDT, they have to come and seek our consent. We have to, we don't want the government to increase profits tax, salaries tax, because that will undermine the business environment. Now we're increasing the tax by $80 from $120 to $200. Will there be an impact? Will people be discouraged from using the Hong Kong International Airport? We are not really sure, but we can make a guess. We have many destinations connected to the international airport here. Our efficiency is high, and our airport is attractive on its own. There will be an impact caused by the tax increase, but we think that the impact is minimal. The DAB supports the bill. When the economy and the fiscal position is not good, the government tries to raise the tax. We find it reasonable, but I hope that when the economic situation recovers, the government will try to lower the tax to allow the people to share the fruits of the prosperity. For transit passengers who stay overnight, I hope that, I asked the government to exempt them from the tax. Eventually, the government extended the scope to cover travelers who stay here for no more than 48 hours. By this, they will be able to leave the airport and spend. Or alternatively, they can choose to shop in the airport. I'm glad that the government has taken on board our suggestion. We also asked the government to impose the increase by phases, say by increasing $40 per year. But as I talked to the trade, they said that we should increase it in one go, because by increasing the tax by in phases, people may have this impression that we are increasing the tax very often. Hopefully, the government will not make another adjustment soon. Some passengers may enjoy a refund of the departure tax, but in order to get the refund, they have to fill out a very long and complicated form, and they have to submit it at a specific counter at the airport. Afterwards, they have to wait for a period of time before the Civil Aviation Department will send a check to the relevant passengers, who will probably already be outside Hong Kong. So I wonder if the airport authority should be empowered to, say, refund the relevant passengers in cash. But this travelers will be able to experience how efficient we are. We increase the tax because of the fiscal deficit, so the DAB supports it. But I hope that the government will be prudent in its spending, and I hope that there will not be any more increases in the government fees and charges. I so submit. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I now call upon the Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury to reply, then the debate will come to a close. Secretary. President, I'd like to first thank Mr. Lee Chen-keun, Chairman of the Bills Committee on Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025, the bill in short, and the 14 members for participating in the scrutiny of the bill. And I'd also like to thank the 25 members who spoke for offering us some invaluable suggestions. The bill is to implement the proposal set out in the budget to increase the air passenger departure tax APDT from $120 to $200 as a part of the reinforced fiscal consolidation program. It is expected that an additional $1.6 billion will be generated for the government. The increased APDT will take effect on the 1st of October 2025. Air tickets purchased before that will not be affected. Another purpose of the bill is to streamline the financial arrangement relating to payment of administration fee to airlines and helicopters companies collectively referred to as operators. Currently, operators will first deduct the administration fee from the APDT received and then remit the remaining sum to the government's designated account. According to the Public Finance Ordinance, no expenditure should be charged on the general revenue. Therefore, the FSTB will first budget for the relevant provision and its estimates every year and transfer the relevant provision to the Civil Aviation Department, CAD, so that CAD can credit the sum to the relevant revenue account. We propose to empower the Financial Secretary to approve the operators to retain part of the APDT collected for offsetting the administration fee payable to them, and provide that the retained fees do not form part of the general revenue under the Public Finance Ordinance. With the proposed amendments, FSTB will no longer need to budget for the relevant provision, streamline the accounting procedures without affecting the existing ADPT collection arrangements. The CAD will continue to vet the declarations form submitted by the operators to make sure that the net ADPT paid is correct. The bill, as we pointed out during the Bills Committee meeting, after streamlining the procedures, the government will keep the information transparent. We will publish the relevant administration fee public. The bill will come into effect on the day on which the bill is passed by the LegCo, is published in the Gazette. During the course of scrutiny, some members worried if the competitiveness of our airport will be compromised after raising the APDT and discourage transfer or transit passengers from using our airport. We'd like to emphasize that we have struck a balance between increasing revenue and minimizing the impact on passengers when deciding to raise the APDT. Major considerations are as follows. First of all, the last adjustment to APDT was made in 2003, that is some 22 years ago. The cumulative inflation rate since then aligns closely with the proposed rate of increase. Second, the increase has minimal impact on the overall traveling cost incurred by air passengers, including tourists. According to the Hong Kong Tourism Board's Visitor Profile Report 2024, the per capita spending of overnight visitors, excluding the expenditure on air tickets, the proposed $80 increase accounts for only 1% or so of their overall spending. Similarly, the impact on Hong Kong people traveling overseas is minimal. Third, the Airport Authority has imposed an airport construction fee since the 1st of August 2016 to finance the 3 one-way systems. Transfer and transit passengers are all subject to the fee. However, since then, the passenger throughput at the international airport has recorded year-on-year growth in 2017 and 2018. Fourth, transfer and transit passengers who depart and arrive at Hong Kong on the same day are exempted from APDT under the ordinance. These passengers will therefore not be affected. Fifth, some are worried that passengers may be driven to neighboring airports because of the increase. We are, however, of the view that when passengers choose an airport for their trips, apart from the price of air tickets, they will also consider other factors such as airport's aviation network, flight frequency, land and sea transportation links, airport facilities surrounding the airport, and travel efficiency. In terms of aviation network, Hong Kong IA is connected to about 90 international passenger destinations around the world. It leads in terms of air connectivity and efficiency compared to neighboring airports. The impact of the tax increase on travelers' choice is limited. Sixth, adjustment to APDT affects air passengers only. It is more acceptable compared to other measures to increase government revenue that may affect the general public and businesses, such as raising salary tax, profits tax rates, etc. Having considered these factors, we think that adjusting the APDT is the right measure to increase government revenue, and the proposed $80 increase is reasonable and affordable. In light of the views of some members and stakeholders, we're going to relax one of the exemption criteria from requiring passengers to arrive and depart on the same day to allowing passengers to depart from Hong Kong by aircraft on the next calendar day. That is a maximum of 48 hours. We will extend the exemption to cover all transit passengers arriving in Hong Kong via land and sea boundary control point to encourage more travelers, especially those from the Greater Bay Area, to make use of the Hong Kong International Airport for transit, thereby enhancing its competitiveness. We are drafting the relevant subsidiary legislation and will introduce it into the Legislative Council as soon as possible so that the two exemptions can be implemented in tandem with the new APDT on the 1st of October this year. After the two exemptions have taken effect, eligible transit passengers arriving in Hong Kong via sea, land, and air will no longer need to pay APDT, meaning that they will enjoy a 100% tax exemption. We believe that this will greatly enhance the appeal of our airport to transit passengers. These transit passengers will drive the hotel, catering, and retail industries of Hong Kong. Members said that we should encourage more travelers to make use of Hong Kong International Airport for transit. The government has been working with the airport authority to enhance Hong Kong's competitiveness as an international aviation hub. Our airport is competitive largely due to its network, service quality, and efficiency. We will continue to work on these areas by, for example, expanding our flight network, developing intermodal transport network with other cities in the Greater Bay Area. We will collaborate with the airport authority in promoting the development of the airport city to consolidate our strengths as a transit hub. Apart from that, we have been working with the Tourism Commission and Tourism Board in rolling out promotional campaigns to encourage transit passengers to take advantage of the new exemption to stay and spend in Hong Kong, thereby promoting the development of the trade and boosting the local economy. There were members who suggest that we should review the tax when our economy recovers. When we draft the budget, we will have regards to the latest economic and societal conditions, tax competitiveness, as well as the fiscal position in drawing up the relevant measures. If the bill is passed, we will immediately inform the operators so that they can adjust their ticketing system as soon as possible and that the new APDT can be implemented on the 1st of October 2025. President, in light of some members and the trade's concern, the government has taken heed of their advice and will roll out 2 exemptions that they suggested. I appeal to members to pass the bill. Thank you, President.
I now put the question to you that the Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025 be read the second time. Will those in favour please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Air Passenger Departure Tax Amendment Bill 2025. This Council